errors and raising these requests for change. And proactive problem management is preventing avoidable incidents by improving the infrastructure. And of course, reporting and documentation is the reports on the results and major problems. Then what are the outputs from these activities? Well, outputs can include an error database, a known error database. You could also call this a problem database. As we've talked about, requests for change, RFCs. These may be sent to the change management process. Again, the change management process may be a separate IT service from problem management, or it may be integrated. Let me just say this. Integrating the change management with the problem management is nowhere near as difficult and as inefficient as combining the incident management and the problem management. That'll make sense a little bit later on when we look at change management. Again, problem records. And we talked about the difference between problem records and problem management of those records and incident records earlier. That's a major output. And then, of course, once you resolve the issue, you resolve the problem, then you've got closed records. So these are the four main outputs of the problem management process. As you saw, problem control is the first and primary action of problem management. It's the process of identifying problems and investigating and diagnosing the root causes. Of course, in problem control, the goal is to get these problems to the state of being a known error. And we do this through classification, we do this through investigation, we do this through diagnosis. Once we do this, we're going to generate a request for change, and then we'll resolve the problem and then close the case. Of course, the request for change is documentation. This could also go to the change management process as well. Now, I mentioned that turning a problem into a known error is done through a process of classification. And that's true. Classification itself includes several different techniques, okay? There's the process of categorization, or to categorize. You identify the relevant domain or the relevant area for this problem. Is it a security problem? Is it a security incident? Is it a hardware issue? Is it a software issue? Is it an in-house application error? Is it a vendor-specific application error? You see the point here. We categorize it. Then we justify allocating resources to this problem by judging its impact. What is the impact on our business process? What is the impact on the bottom line? This could be impact in terms of time, in terms of financial, in terms of personnel needed to be moved to this problem. Is it urgent? Okay? Can you defer this particular problem to a later date to prioritize it, which is the next thing, and put something else more important in its place? Then what is the status? Okay, all on the way you're going to monitor this process. What is the status of this particular problem? Is it a problem? Is it a known error? Is it resolved, or is it closed? And then, of course, problem control deals with investigation and diagnosis. This is a repeated process, or another word that you'll hear used is it's an iterative process. Okay, think about a DNS query, for example, going and moving to different layers of the DNS topology, the DNS hierarchy to resolve a domain name. This is an iterative process as well, repeated over and over and over till we get closer to resolution. Realize that during this iterative process, we may find a temporary fix or a workaround. Okay, if we do, we can communicate this to the incident management, and they can use this at the service desk, and we'll use these temporary fixes and workarounds during the iterative process until we get to a real resolution. And that resolution should be a permanent, long-term resolution. And again, the resolution itself may be replacing hardware or replacing software or replacing a service or a vendor with another better solution. Okay, so during the problem and process control, temporary or emergency fixes may be applied. As I mentioned, eventually through investigation and diagnosis, our problem will become a known error. Once it becomes a known error, it then enters the phase of error control. Okay, this is the process of monitoring and managing these known errors. And we'll do this until they are resolved. In the error control process, this is where the problem manager will issue requests for changes. This can be issued to other personnel in the change management area, or the RFC could get issued to change management IT service if you are following that aspect of the ITIL framework. Error control may also take part in evaluating the changes in a post-implementation review or a PIR. Now you might be wondering, what in the heck is a PIR? Well, let me give you a good example of how to find out what a PIR is. Remember the trusty ITIL version 3 glossary. Remember, guys and gals, let's always go to the source. Here's the PIR, the post-implementation review, a review that takes place after a change or, in some cases, a project has been implemented. Okay, the PIR is going to determine if the change or the project, in our case a change, was successful, and it'll identify opportunities for improving the process. Post-implementation review. Again, that's going to occur during that error control phase. The error control process, since it can be a wide variety of known errors, software, hardware, security, implementation, configuration, insourced, outsourced, it can involve several departments and units, some of which may not even be part of your organization. They may be third party, they may be contractors. So this is a very broad process. Error control also includes identifying errors, recording the errors, assessing the errors, documenting the resolution, and then ultimately closing the case. And during all the stages, we'll be tracking and monitoring, either in an automated fashion, using a product, let's say, from Computer Associates or Hewlett-Packard or Cisco, or it can be done manually with some proprietary system. As the previous two actions of problem management were more reactive, problem control and error control, the next action is the proactive aspect of problem management. That's where you focus on the quality of the infrastructure and the services. Pardon the spelling here, but this should be infrastructure. And this is an ongoing proactive improvement process. Many companies will use trend analysis and other software techniques to preempt problems and incidents, to proactively stabilize and enhance the infrastructure of their organization. Again, the goal here is to proactively look for weaknesses, to perform penetration testing. This is doing security tests and tests against wired and wireless systems, tests against hardware and software, try to penetrate the security boundaries, to test its usage of resources. You also want to look at keeping up with alerts from vendors and bulletins from vendors. For example, if you're using Cisco products or HP products, keep up with the vendor alerts. This should be done proactively and should be coming to the inbox, and you should be going to the website as well. You want to create firewall systems to prevent problems from moving from one domain or one module to the other. This could also be geographically, moving from one floor to the other or from one building to the other. Again, proactively identifying and investigating all of your systems, both hard and soft systems. Finally, we're going to look at the role of the problem manager who's responsible for all of the problem management activities. Now, optimally, in an ITIL framework, the problem manager will be somebody separate from the incident manager. But in many organizations, that is the same person or the same team. If that's the case, it's important from an ITIL standpoint to still separate the duties of incident management from problem management, even if the same individual or team is in charge of the activities. As a matter of fact, it's probably more optimal if the problem manager and the change manager are the same person, and the incident manager is somebody that works closely with the service desk personnel, where the problem manager is more of a second-tier person, maybe a network administrator, a systems administrator type, who's more closely aligned to the physical and software infrastructure. Now, the role and the responsibilities of the problem manager is to maintain all of the problem control procedures and the error control procedures. And of course, remember, the problems come before the error control. Also, the problem manager is going to constantly assess the effectiveness of the problem management process, making changes all along the way. Of course, to make any major changes, he or she will probably need team support or buy-in from middle management or upper management, some type of stakeholders. Again, to improve effectiveness, to improve your systems, it's often going to mean an outlay of money for new solutions. Another big responsibility for the problem manager is to protect the integrity and the independence of incident management. This is really my first point, okay? If the problem manager is also responsible for incident management, they need to have the capability to protect the integrity of incident management and the independence from the problem management process. The problem manager will also govern the proactive prevention campaigns. Again, think back to that firefighter who spends a lot of his or her time doing fire prevention, okay? Same thing here, proactive prevention campaigns to prevent errors and problems and incidents. They may also have to manage personnel on their own team, and personnel for different areas of the company, as well as resources. This could also involve acquisition of people, acquisition of products, hardware, and software. Again, part of assessing the effectiveness of the process, of course, is to then develop and improve the processes. And then once it's all said and done, and the processes or the problems are resolved, and you've closed the case, we want to do possibly what we call post-mortem reviews, reviewing key personnel, reviewing stakeholders, reviewing technical specialists to, again, make sure that we can put together a more improved environment. Constant improvement. Remember, from the very beginning, that's the goal of ITIL, constant improvement. In ITIL problem management, we covered 5 key areas. First of all, we defined what a problem is, and we compared it to an incident. Along those lines, we compared and contrasted problem management versus incident management, 2 totally different concepts with contradictory goals. We looked at the goals and objectives of problem management, the problem management processes, and then finally, some of the roles and responsibilities of the problem manager. I hope this CBT Nugget's been informative.